Place Australia acknowledges traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognises their continuing connection to lands, waters, skies and communities. We pay our deepest respects to elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.
If I could change one thing, I would change adding more plants around the school.
If you want the most honest stakeholder in a room, just ask a young person.
More places for people to work at so they can actually get a bit of money for them when they grow up.
I reckon we should have an Aboriginal teacher that teaches Aboriginal kids in a classroom.
Better yet, ask 400 young people.
And if I could change anything, I would change the racism and basketball courts for our school.
I would stop bullying.
Build a soup kitchen.
So far, this series has taken you inside rooms where adults make decisions. But what happens when you give the people affected by those decisions, in this case young people, a seat at the table?
So, Yoai, my name's Jo Kelly. I'm a proud Dunghutti woman coming to you from Kempsey on the mid-north coast.
Kempsey is in New South Wales, about halfway between Sydney and Brisbane. It's Dunghutti country, spanning saltwater, freshwater and mountains. The Macleay River carving out rugged gorges and valleys.
As a traditional owner here and having connections both to saltwater, freshwater and bush and beach, we have amazing mountain range. We have amazing river system here. Our beaches are well known across the globe.
Jo Kelly is the Executive Director of Learning the Macleay.
Learning the Macleay is a social impact community-led entity. We have been operating now in the Macleay Valley and on Dunghutti country for just over 3 years. It's about how do we untie the red tape of government to amplify the voice of community and develop solutions with them.
Jo has spent the last 2 years working with young people in Kempsey to develop solutions to some of the problems faced by the community.
We went out into all schools in the Macleay Valley except for one. And that conversation was around, what do you see are issues? It's going back to the basics. What do you want to see? How should it be done? We decided to work with primary schools and high schools because use that as a way of early intervention and prevention. Because if we can work with them for the next 5 years, we can actually change their trajectory, hopefully, build them and empower them with a whole lot of tools that kids these days don't have access to.
I'm Brooke Boney, proud Gamilaroi woman and journalist with a background in public policy. From Partnerships for Local Action and Community Empowerment, this is Making Place Matter. Today we're asking, who decides and how do you hold people to account? What happens after you've left the room? How do you communicate decisions back to the broader community? And once you've made a commitment, how do you follow through? Accountability is the less glamorous, crunchy part of shared decision making, but without it, trust doesn't stick. Today, 3 different organisations show you how they navigate accountability and how they use it, not just to report back, but to constantly sharpen and improve their practice.
When we're looking at Kempsey as a town, we're looking at a place where you drive through the main street and the central business district, and we have a lot of empty shops. You drive up to West Kempsey, and as you cross the railway track, you can see a police station that's been built. You go up a little bit further, you have a new Department of Community Services building there. You continue down that road and you turn up, about 12 kilometres later, and you've got a new jail. We are known for youth crime, dysfunctionality, but it's not the only community that's an issue too.
Like Jo said, youth crime isn't a problem isolated to Kempsey. The built environment is reflective of one approach to that problem, but Jo and Learning the Macleay are taking a different approach.
So the work that we do is We don't do any service delivery, and that's the big confusion with community, because community often looking at service providers and what programs they deliver. We don't do that. We're the ones in the background looking at the data and evidence. We're the ones looking at what is actually happening in our community, and based on the collected data that we've received, this data then allows us to see what's working and what's not working, and then we are allowed to go into community to find out if this gap is still happening and how do we close it.
So I reckon by the sounds of that, you must be pretty familiar with shared decision making. What does it mean to you?
Look, shared decision making is around how do we collaborate together. It's about shifting the power from us to them and us working together with them, and it becomes a we. So how do we do that realistically? It's been a hard shift, but we're working in that now collectively with Aboriginal community controlled organisations, local service providers and all levels of government.
Learning the Macleay have shifted the power all the way back into the hands of the people affected by the decisions, young people. They're responsible for creating the Yuanyinda Action Plan. Yuanyinda translates from Dungari to Yes, You. It started with surveying hundreds of kids and teenagers. Joe's team then pulled the information from those surveys together and presented it back to the young people at a youth summit day.
From that, we did workshops. So it was then trying to work out what are some of the solutions to the issues that you identified and who needs to take responsibility for this piece of work. So we're like trying to align all of that stuff. And that summit, we also had all levels of government. We had philanthropists there, we had local service providers there, and we had young people who were at the centre at the table leading all the discussions.
I'm just sort of getting a mental image of what it must look like to be in the room when that happens. Is everyone sitting around a table? Are the kids sort of standing up at a lectern? How does it work?
Well, normally what we do is we'll have some information at the front. We'll then break into workshops, but it'll be the young people who are then presenting back what their ideas and concerns or issues or actions are. So we don't do that at all. It's the young people who are coming back. Again, we're sitting and listening and learning from them because that's the role that we need to do in terms of amplifying voice. So from the Youth Summit last year, we were able to present at a social impact conference in Sydney in early July. So we were able to bring one of the young people with us. And he spoke at this national conference. He was as nervous as all hell, but he did an amazing job.
Just the idea of a young person standing up and sort of giving voice to their perspectives, it makes me tear up. I can't imagine how emotional it was to actually be there.
Oh, look, I get emotional with it too, Brooke, because, you see these young people in community, you know their families, you know where they come from. I'm often reflecting on what happened to me when I was a young person in this community. When I left school, I was guided by a group of elders. I was pushed to the front because they didn't feel confident to talk. That's the same process that I sort of work through now with the young people, that we're in the back supporting them, we're giving them the knowledge, we're giving them the aspirations, and we want them to take that step into this space, knowing that we're at the back of them.
An action plan is being developed out of that summit, which is co-designed by the young people based on all of their work. One of the things the kids have already identified is that there's no place for them to hang out after school or on weekends.
I reckon we should have more places that kids can go to and kids could have fun at.
Which makes sense. Towns are designed by adults. They're usually built around adult priorities like work, roads and safety. Adults don't really think about fun.
The conversation was around, this is what young people are saying, this is what we need to be doing.
Jo says she approached her local MP to tell them about what the kids were asking for, a youth hub. The local member said, "We're on it. The council is going to build a brand new PCYC in Kempsey." PCYC is Police Citizen Youth Club. It's a not-for-profit that works with police and community to support sports and recreation for young people.
And I went, well, we don't need PCYC in a brand new building. We actually need a youth hub somewhere where young people can go, somewhere where young people can feel safe, somewhere where young people can wash their clothes if they're couch surfing and can grab a feed if they need, somewhere where they can, do it like a homework centre or have access to internet, because not everybody has it.
Can you explain why a PCYC might not have worked as well as a youth centre?
I think that there's a number of layers. The first thing that comes to mind, which was part of the conversation with the young people last year, is there's a membership fee. So that with families who have multiple kids becomes an issue. And some of the work that we do with our community families, some have anywhere up to 6 or 7 kids. So if that fee's there, you can't pay for everybody. At the moment, it's located in another part of town, so West Kempsey has to go to South Kempsey, and there's always been a cultural issue between South Kempsey and West Kempsey. That river has divided many conversations and instigated many inappropriate conversations as well. For the work that we did with the young people, it wasn't programmed enough. You can't have PCYC only work operating on weekends when our young people need spaces during the week to go to.
So then in that situation, how do you hold the council accountable?
So that's again part of the work that we do, but the next bit is getting the young people together to go and talk with council to say, how was this decision made? We would work with them to prepare them, and from that preparation then sit with them to support them in the background while they have that conversation. And, that again, they're the group that we really need to be working with to keep them safe, because sometimes being at home isn't the safe place. And we have to create that, and that's why the Youth Hub, they'd even identified the location. They know that they want to have a cafe. They want young people to learn how to be baristas. They want young people to make sandwiches and food. So it's a whole cafe type setting. They've already given us the ideas, and that's part of this action plan then to say, how can we make this happen for you?
What might accountability look like from your perspective in an ideal world? Is it getting the children in there in this context to sort of represent their perspectives and, saying to the council, look, these are the children you want to engage with, and they're telling you exactly what they want, and it's not being delivered in that way?
That accountability is about how then does council make that decision on behalf of young people who aren't 18, and how do they take their conversation serious if they're not even having a conversation or engaging with them in the first instance. So that's on our cards to work in the next few weeks, and then we will collectively get young people who are part of the design work from the last 10 months of work to come back together to look at and then identify some representatives from that space to then talk about it. Because one of the things that they did say as the buckets of work is they want to talk with local government. They want to go and visit state government and Parliament House and in Sydney and down in Canberra. So it's about opening the doors so that they can see how decision making is really made, with the idea of setting up some kind of youth voice in our community.
Sort of opening the doors so they can walk through it.
Yeah. And again, that's us sitting back, facilitating, supporting and designing the work, but they're delivering it and doing it. Utopia to me is about everybody being safe, everybody being able to live in this community without racism, to live in this community without crime, to live in this community where everybody is equal and we have, we are so economically prosperitized, if that's even a word, so that we can move forward together, because, we come from a community background of disadvantage. We've got a whole lot of skilled people in our communities that are underutilised. So it's about how do we bring that back, and we not only giving back to community, but we're getting people to work in our community to say, I come from Kempsey, this is my place.
If kids can hold their town to account, what happens when patients hold a health system to account?
Well, my name is Eugene McGarrell. I'm General Manager at Sydney North Health Network, which is a primary health network up in northern Sydney.
Eugene's patch covers most of Sydney north of the Harbour Bridge, the northern beaches to Hornsby.
You've probably heard that, northern Sydney is healthy and wealthy, but it has pockets of real disadvantage and inequity. And the data on that is really hidden.
Like Learning the Macleay, the Sydney North Health Network isn't involved in service delivery. They're behind the scenes, looking at the data, talking to all of the stakeholders, taking a bird's eye view of the system to try to work more efficiently and seamlessly for patients.
And we do that by funding services that fill the gaps, that improve access and connect care. So that might include mental health supports, services that are delivered after hours. So we were created specifically to tailor services to meet the local population health needs rather than one size fits all.
Funding isn't neutral. It shapes what exists and what doesn't. Eugene sees accountability as a counterweight and also a way to throw open the process.
Sharing the power is really about being transparent about the allocation of funding that's there, but also to be able to share that, co-design, the service design and how that funding is allocated. And so that means that we need to be transparent and to open up to our stakeholders and to community and to really be clear about what are the resources that are available to us, what's the funding that's available to us, but also what are the policy levers that are available to us as a community and shared stakeholders.
Previously, the funding was allocated through a competitive process. Service providers had to bid against each other for a slice of the pie. Now, the approach is collaborative. It's not about who wins the money, but what works best for the community.
For example, you might have one provider that is specialist in drug and alcohol treatment, and then you'll have another organisation that is good at providing long-term care for somebody who's got a chronic mental health issue. What we know is that sometimes a person can have both. So rather than having one provider providing one component of it and another the other, how do they come together to make sure they're dealing with the person for both of their needs?
Getting service providers to work this way is a big shift. Eugene's next goal, though, is even bolder. He wants to encourage service providers to open up their books, showing exactly where the money goes, and hopefully improve outcomes for patients.
We're currently going through an interesting time working with a range of 12 providers. Very good providers, have done some really good work over the years, some of them decades, a long time. We've really said to them, look, we want you guys to come together and work with us as a syndicate. And we would like for that syndicate to have an open book approach to funding and to look at how we co-design and co-create and work together. And it's a really interesting dynamic. I sense from their perspective that if you're a CEO of a non-government organisation, your first priority is to make sure that your organisation has the funding, the workforce, the capability to deliver those services now and into the future. And that would be, if I was CEO, my main game. Being asked to be open to a new way of working with a whole set of other non-government organisations who are in fact competitors to the piece of funding pie that's available to you is quite a big ask. And that's an ask that we have put to our providers. They're coming on board. I feel, and I believe very strongly, that you create a collective approach to primary care services, you're more likely to attract funding from other sources, including philanthropy, local business, fundraising. Because I get a sense that funding will come when people see that you've got a unified way of delivering services to people and delivering outcomes in a way that is measurable and reportable.
There's the regulated accountability, but there's the accountability that one should take looking in the mirror and being accountable to yourself and making sure that you have absolute certainty you've done the best you can. It may not feel enough, but you must be confident you've done the best you can.
Jake Ellwood is the CEO of the Queensland Reconstruction Authority, or QRA. They're the body responsible for making sure Queensland is disaster resilient, and they help coordinate recovery after disaster. Jake's got his work cut out for him. When it comes to accountability, he's responsible for people's lives and livelihoods.
As a statutory authority, I have accountability. I'm the default state recovery coordinator, so accountable for recovery. We manage the disaster recovery funding arrangements with Commonwealth, so we're fiscally accountable for the use of much of the funding that is made available, because, at the end of the day, it's got to be used well. It's taxpayers' money. But I think on a broad level, we are responsible to the state. We're responsible to the people to make sure that we're doing the best we can. And sometimes that won't feel good enough. Sometimes even to us, we always wish we could do more, but we are accountable to do the very best that we can to help people in the toughest of times.
Accountability for Jake isn't a straight line. The councils hold QRA to account, the community holds their councils to account, and the state and federal governments are woven in there as well.
Councils are accountable to their community. And so helping them as well, because when the chips are down, the community is looking to the council, looking to the mayor, looking to the local disaster management group for support and assistance.
And accountability isn't static. Jake says they're constantly monitoring, evaluating and refining how services are delivered over time.
So we have an organisation, the Inspector General of Emergency Management, who do reviews quite routinely on events, or it could be a specific aspect of an event. So there's a very formal reportable mechanism through them to look at how things went. But at state level, we review at the end of a season or at the end of an event how things went. What could we have done differently? What should we have done differently? Because you've got to keep monitoring to make sure you're moving forward, because it's reminding people that it's not over at month 6. So when everyone else has moved on and the cameras are gone and the interest is gone, there are still people out there who are living in a shell of a house, or, in 2 years' time, there's a primary producer out there who's still struggling fiscally because of the massive flooding event that they had, or at 4 years' time, there's still someone who's struggling mentally with the trauma of what happened to them. So it's also making sure that we don't just look at it at a moment, it's long term. And that's, I think, the thing about us is we continue to ask ourselves the questions: did we get it right? Is there more we need to do? Is there more we can do? And how do we do it differently?
Like Eugene at Sydney North Health Network, competitive grants is an area where QRA have changed their process.
Previously, it was competitive, so people would put in competitive bids to have access to funding. But what that drove, in my mind, was for those who had the ability, could invest very heavily in putting forward a very strong case. And then those councils maybe that didn't quite have sufficient resources to mount such an amazing argument, they might miss out.
This is how QRA ended up moving towards resilience action plans. These are plans developed by local councils to help them work out what projects they should prioritise and invest in now to reduce risk when a disaster does strike.
So now they just keep their local resilience action plan up to date, and then we will go to each of those and look at their priorities and then take it from there. So and then look at the risks and look at where their high priority projects are.
An example might be a community decides they want to focus on building a levee to help divert floodwater, or improving roads and bridges to help them withstand natural disasters.
Okay, well, what will that achieve? What are the great things here? What about this? What about that? What about that? What's available? What can we achieve? And I think that is it's a better approach, because it's making sure that those that need support are getting the support. So I guess it's a slight shift in methodology, but I think it's the right thing because it will make sure everyone's getting a voice, and I think that's super important.
It kind of sounds like Jake and the Queensland Reconstruction Authority have it all figured out, but Jake says that complacency is the challenge in the work that he does.
The challenge of sort of this group decision making, bring people together, the constant communication is it's hard. And I would argue that it's almost like your default setting is to go to the easiest thing, right? And so the easiest thing is not to share decision making. The easiest thing is just to make a decision. But it doesn't mean it's the best thing. And so I think organisationally, our challenge will always be to keep fighting to make sure it is shared decision making and to not slip to the easiest, not slip to the default, not slip to just making decisions for everyone because that's easy. You know, it can be difficult. You could easily go, oh, it's another monsoon. I know exactly what they'll need. We don't even need to ask. We'll just tell them what the support they need. We'll just tell them what to do because we've seen it 145 times. But it ignores the fact that that community is very different and it ignores their need. And so I think it's keeping ourselves honest and humbled and with our ears open, listening.
I wanted to end by asking Eugene McGarrell about his takeaway from shared decision making.
I haven't got all the answers. That's really literally when you go into these shared decision making arenas. It's about leaving your ego at the door. It's also about being open to new information, new ways of thinking. I mean, the older we get, well, I'll speak for myself, the more ingrained we are and the more stronger we believe.
Don't drag me into this, Eugene.
I'm not going to say it.
You get more wise and, you make better decisions.
Well, yeah, you think you get wiser and you think the things that you know are steadfast. You become much more steadfast in what you believe. And so it's about letting that go. Be open to new ways of thinking and be open to other points of view. And, the diversity of that is the magic, really. And so being open to that magic happening is really the art of joint decision making.
You've heard 3 very different approaches there to accountability, but across all of them, community participation is key to getting a good outcome. Thanks so much to Joe Kelly, Jake Ellwood and Eugene McGarrell for chatting with us on Making Place Matter. Series 1 is all about who decides. I'm Brooke Boney. Follow Making Place Matter in your favourite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. You can also head to placeaustralia.org for more resources. Making Place Matter is a podcast from Partnerships for Local Action and Community Empowerment. This series, Who Decides, is produced by Dead Set Studios.